Hey, what's up, guys? Combat Critique here. Let's take a look at this upcoming fight between Cody No Love Garbrandt and Brian Kelleher. So let's get started. Let's take a look at the records of these two guys, starting with Cody. So Cody has 18 fights in total, and he's won 13 of his 18 fights, lost 5. If we talk about his 13 wins, he has 10 of them via knockout and just 3 via decision. So this man is really a knockout artist. Almost all of his wins have been via knockout, just 3 via decision, and he has no wins or losses via submission. If we talk about his 5 losses, 4 of them have been via knockout, so his chin is a suspect, and just 1 loss via decision. Pretty exciting fighter to watch. Now let's take a look at Brian Kelleher's record. So Brian has 38 fights in total and he's won 24 of his 38 fights, lost 14. If we talk about his 24 wins, he has 8 of them via knockout, so he has some knockout power. 10 of them have been via submissions. This man is really a submission artist, and 6 of them have been via decision. If we talk about his 14 losses, he has been knocked out just once, and this man has over 38 fights. He's been lost 14 times, but in those 14 times, he just has 1 KO loss. His chin is really good, quite the opposite of Cody Garbrandt. If we talk about his submission losses, he has 8 of them. If you look at his records, and if you look at the fact that he has 10 submission wins and 8 submission losses, this just shows that he is not very good on the ground and he is susceptible to getting subbed. He also has 5 decision losses. His record, once it comes to decisions, is also not that great. He has 6 wins and 5 losses in decision fights. However, Cody Garbrandt does not really have submission skills. I don't think he'll be able to sub Brian Kelleher. And if this fight goes to the ground, I think Brian Kelleher is the guy with an advantage. He has 10 wins via submission. Now let's take a look at the physical and career stats for both these guys. Starting with the height. Height is 5'8" for Cody and it is 5'6" for Kelleher. So in this case, Cody Garbrandt will have a slight 2-inch height advantage. Weight is even at 135 pounds for both these guys. If we talk about the reach, it is 65 inches for Garbrandt and 66 inches for Kelleher. So Kelleher will have a slight 1-inch reach advantage. Stance is orthodox for Garbrandt and it is switch for Kelleher. And if we talk about the age, Garbrandt is the younger fighter and he is younger by about 5 years. I think age can definitely play a factor in this fight. Kelleher is really old for the division. This is the 135 pounds division. This is not the light heavyweight or heavyweight where you can be a champion even if you are 40. At lower weight classes, you really peak out by 35, and Kelleher is way beyond that. I think Kelleher is in the tail end of his career. Now let's take a look at the career stats for both these guys, starting with the strike landed per minute. So this stat tells you about the number of strikes that you land on your opponents per minute on average. This is 3 for Garbrandt and it is 3.36 for Kelleher. So Kelleher will have a slight advantage here. He is landing quite a few more significant strikes per minute on his opponents. Next up, we have the striking accuracy of 40% for Garbrandt and 41% for Kelleher. So again, a slight advantage goes to Kelleher, even though both these guys are almost even. Next up, we have the strikes absorbed per minute. Now this is the opposite of strikes landed per minute, and this signifies the number of significant strikes that you absorb from your opponents per minute. This is 3.89 for Garbrandt and it is 4.61 for Kelleher. So in this case, the guy with the lower number has an advantage because he is getting it lesser. So here the advantage goes to Garbrandt. Striking defense is 61% for Garbrandt and it is 54% for Kelleher. So again, the advantage here goes to Cody Garbrandt, and he is surprisingly the guy with the better striking defense in this fight. Now let's take a look at the wrestling and grappling stats. Starting with the takedown average, it is 1.13 for Garbrandt and 1.79 for Kelleher. So Kelleher will have an advantage here. He is getting quite a few more takedowns in his fights than Garbrandt. Takedown accuracy, however, is 34% for Garbrandt and it is 42% for Kelleher. Again, advantage goes to Kelleher. Takedown defense is 78% for Cody, which is really good, and it is 60% for Kelleher. So here the advantage goes to Cody Garbrandt. He is having higher takedown defense. Submission average is just 0 for Garbrandt. He has never attempted a submission in the UFC, whereas it is 0.7 for Kelleher. He has 10 wins via submission. Just looking at his record, you can tell he is the better submission guy. If this fight goes to the ground, I will be worried for Garbrandt. Now let's talk about the significant strikes by position and by target for both these guys. Starting with the significant strikes by position. If we talk about Cody Garbrandt, so 89% of all his strikes are from the standing position, just 5% from the clinch and 7% on the ground. He pretty much likes to keep it standing. And if we talk about Brian Kelleher, 77% of all his strikes are from the standing position, 7% from the clinch, and 16% on the ground. So Kelleher is using ground and pound more in his game compared to Cody. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by target for both these guys. Starting with Garbrandt, 74% of all his strikes are to the head, 13% to the body and another 13% to the leg. Whereas Kelleher has 66% strikes to the head, 16% to the body and 18% to the leg. So Kelleher goes to the body and to the leg slightly more often than Garbrandt. Now let's take a look at some of the previous fights of these two guys. Starting with Cody Garbrandt. So Cody in his last fight beat Trevin Jones and he won the fight via unanimous decision. This fight happened in March of this year and he was slightly ahead in terms of the number of strikes landed, but he had 2 takedowns over just one of Trevin Jones and he won the fight. It was a 3-round fight. Before this fight, he lost to Kelleher and this fight was stopped in the very first round. Cody lost the fight via knockout. Before this, Cody also lost to Rob Font. It was a unanimous decision loss in a 5-round fight. Rob Font was way ahead in terms of the number of strikes landed and he landed 2 takedowns on Cody. Cody landed 3 takedowns on Rob Font, but he could not get the win because he was lagging in terms of the number of strikes landed by a huge margin. Before this, Cody Garbrandt KO'd Rafael Assunção in the second round and this fight happened in June of 2020. So this man has not been really active. He almost fights at an average of 1 fight per year in the last couple of years. Before this, Cody lost to Pedro Munoz and this was a fight which was stopped in the very first round. Cody lost via knockout. And before this, he also lost to TJ Dillashaw. This fight was stopped in the second round. Cody again lost via knockout. So this man, his chin is really suspect. All these guys that you are saying that he lost to or that he won, these are all solid guys in the division. Kelleher, Rob Font, Assunção, Pedro Munoz, TJ Dillashaw, a lot of big names in the resume of Cody Garbrandt. Before this, Cody beat Dominic Cruz and he did it via unanimous decision. It was a 5-round masterclass performance. Cody was undefeated and at this point and he looked like he was gonna be the number 1 pound for pound. However, that did not really happen. And before this fight, he also beat Takeya Mizukaki and this fight was stopped in the very first round via knockout. It's a pretty exciting fighter to watch. That chin is suspect, but he has some serious knockout power. He has 1 punch KO power. Now let's take a look at the record of Brian Kelleher. So Kelleher in his last fight lost to Mario Bautista and this fight was stopped in the very first round via submission rear naked choke. Before this, he also lost to Umar in a similar fashion. The fight was stopped in the very first round via submission rear naked choke. I don't think Cody Garbrandt really possesses submission skills to threaten Brian Kelleher like these two guys did. Before this, Brian Kelleher beat Kevin Kroom and he landed 6 takedowns, won a unanimous decision in a 3-round fight. Before this, he beat Domino Pilate, and in this fight, he was way ahead in terms of the strikes landed. He had 3 takedowns as well as 2 submission attempts over Domingo, and he won the fight via unanimous decision. It was a 3-round fight. Before this, he lost to Ricky Simon. It was a unanimous decision loss. Ricky was way ahead in terms of the strikes landed, and he landed 6 takedowns over Kelleher. And before this, Brian beat Ray Rodriguez by guillotine choke in the very first round. He lost to Cody Stamen, and this was a unanimous decision loss. Cody was ahead in terms of the number of strikes landed, as well as he had 1 takedown more than Kelleher. And before this, Brian Kelleher beat Hunter Azure, and in this fight, he kind of won in the second round. But if this fight would have gone the distance, I think Azure was winning the fight. He was way ahead in terms of the strikes landed. But Brian finished the fight in the second round via knockout. This is the recent knockout event that he has on his record. Overall, it is a pretty close fight. If I have to pick a winner, I think I'll go with Brian Kelleher. I just saw the odds for this fight. Cody Garbrandt is a huge favorite. I don't think he deserves to be that big of a favorite. I definitely see value in Brian Kelleher. He might be the older guy, but he has better submissions. Also, he has been knocked out just once. I think his chin will hold up in this fight against Cody Garbrandt. Cody really does not have submission, so if he has to win, it has to be a decision, whereas Brian can finish this fight via submission. He can knock out Cody Garbrandt. We know Cody Garbrandt does not really have a good chin, and he can also win via decision. So I think Brian Kelleher can definitely win this fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video.